people.
Thanks for coming back or being here for the first time. Either way,
You're here.
one is silver and the other is gold.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to take this time to appreciate who you are, Cory.
Let's do that.
I thought we'd start with a little segment I like to call Stupid Questions. And we're back. What is the...
Is this the first stupid question?
Yeah.
Let's go. Bring it on right away. Coffee.
Well,
Let's go.
What's the worst thing about you, Cory?
That's not stupid. That's embarrassing. Worst thing about me? Ooh. Depends who you ask. You're asking me, though.
Yeah, so this is you. Like,
what do
this is
I think my worst...
Yeah, what do you sit around crying into your pillow about?
Oh, man. Good one. I mean, that's a tough one. There's
I'll go
so
first.
many things. Okay, you go first.
If you want. I mean, if you want time to think.
Yeah, I had to pick one of the many
so
things
many,
that I want to change.
So many things. My worst thing about me. That is hard once you start thinking.
Right? Because then you're like, could be this, but it could also be that. I'll tell you one thing I hate that I notice about myself that really makes me frustrated is any sort of laziness or procrastination. If I find myself, like to me, I don't know if this is normal, but I'll actually feel it. Like I get this feeling in my chest when I know that I'm wasting time, when I know that I'm not being productive and I could be, especially for someone that has, is blessed enough to have guitars in my home, and I have a little home studio set up and I have all this cool stuff. And sometimes I walk in there and I'm just going in there to change my clothes or something. And I'm like, I just feel, it's like a guilt, if I'm not being productive as I could be.
Is that like Western American guilt?
Totally.
Like I have stuff?
Yeah.
There
Why can't I just
stuff?
relax and just not feel the pressure? I just put pressure on myself, I guess.
What's the worst thing about you then? That you do that to
That I
yourself
do
or
that.
that you do it?
I don't know. Which one's worse, that I am being procrastinating or if I'm, or if it's worse to beat myself up about it.
That's almost like a good thing about you though.
Okay,
Look at you. You turned it around. I'm just so concerned about being responsible.
That's just the first thing I think of because it
No, I know what
stresses
you
me
mean,
out.
though.
I just get this like guilty stress.
Like works against you kind of. Like it's a negative because it's like,
And then sometimes if you do something because you feel like you have to do it, it's not always the best motivation. 'Cause you know what I mean? If you do something out of guilt, it's not the same as being inspired to do something.
yeah, you know what's interesting too is that word guilt and like what's inside that concept, because in a lot of ways doing something out of guilt is almost like a little part of what discipline is. Like
Someone's got to be kind of the taskmaster.
yeah, it's like you have this little person inside you that has a whip. It's like
Yeah.
and that's like the discipline side, and guilt is like a guilt and shame and ego and drive and goals, and it's almost like this big soup of things that are kind of positive and kind of negative that add up to discipline.
Right.
I noticed it with songwriting, like that. It's weird because there's like so many different periods in my life where I've written songs. It's like over 20 years now of songwriting, and early on, like when you said, I get this feeling in my stomach, like, I know that feeling.
You know the feeling?
You're like, I don't know if it's just me. And I was going to say, no, it's just you. But no, it's me too. And it's probably a lot of people, which is like that feeling of maybe deep down, this is like the positive side of it. Like it's like a feeling of responsibility. I can do this. Why am I not doing it? You beat yourself up. But then it's also like it is like there's some kind of laziness factor, or there's something where you like it's like a deep down insecurity mixed with like, well, if I don't even, whatever I'm gonna do is gonna suck anyway, and or the other thing, which is like the fragile flower version of like, I'm just not inspired, like now's not the right time, or like it's more like I'm cultivating, I'm in a cocoon of songwriteriness. But like back in the day, I would just, this is back when I was like living at home, my early 20s, and like I always felt like I had to just get out of there, and like I took my little notebook and my little tape
that's
recorder
good.
and my
just
guitar.
to clear your head, just to get away.
But inevitably what I'd do is I'd go and maybe, and this wasn't a lot, but for some reason it stands out in my mind as like the ultimate version of this, is I'd feel like, meanwhile my studio's at home, but I'm like, I want to go somewhere. Maybe it's that romanticized attitude. Like I always wished I was the guy that could like go and sit at a coffee house and write some sweet poetry or something, but I was never...
Yeah.
There's
never something to that, though.
It was never romanticized like that for me. So whenever I do that, I'd always like sit around and be like, this isn't where I want to... I can't like sing here and like write a song.
And there's more distractions if you go outside of your little
totally
sanctuary.
Inevitably at one point you're like, well, maybe some girl will see that like I'm the artist in the corner.
Just like all the other artists in all the corners of the Starbucks.
Yeah. And
there's something to that, though. There's something to just getting, I think, getting out of the changing of scenery, just especially if you're going outside, you know. 'Cause how many days have you been locked in a studio and you're just
all
getting air conditioning and you don't really ever get outside until you look out. Like there's been times when we look out the window and the sun's down. We've been inside all day.
Yeah.
Not that that's bad, but I think it's good for your subconscious to kind of
have more input.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, okay, two things immediately sprung to mind, which one was one of the best, or one of the songs I'm most proud of that's like a pop song. It hasn't been released, but it's called Crying in Black and White. And it was like one of the times where like I went to the beach with my wife and my son and sat there with a guitar and wrote on the beach. Like, and I don't think I've ever done that. I've had a guitar at the beach before, but like, and the change of scenery, and I remember thinking like, I'm just going to try to write something that's coming, that feels like it's some sort of, it's growing out of where I am somehow. And I wrote something that felt very like not like me, and I kind of it felt like, ooh, this is different. I should do this more often. Like,
That's cool.
Field trips,
and then you never did it again.
Never did it again. I've since done it. You know, I spent a lot of time out in Julian.
So that was my next.
woods.
Yeah, that was my next thing I was going to say. You at the beach. I have a whole theory about like the beach. There's just something about like there's constant. The ocean is moving, and the air is like full of this salty, all these different elements. Compared to the woods, we were talking about that too, because you're up there a lot.
And
totally different energies, right?
There's a theory about that too, which kind of goes against, I think, how you feel at the beach. But the theory is people who live by the water, the ocean takes energy from them, and the mountains give you energy. And it has maybe something, they theorize it has something to do with, at least in the mountains, you know, oxygen from the trees and maybe elevation or something. But like when you do look at like beach bums or like beach towns, there tend to be people who are just
more
kind
mellow,
of like less motivated, maybe.
Every surfer I've ever known they're always like really cool and always really mellow, and they don't seem like they're stressed out. I wouldn't say that beach takes energy. I would say it's a calming energy. It's just a different type of
maybe
energy.
It takes away anxious energy.
Yeah, maybe
somehow.
It's that, because I always feel when I leave the beach, I'll
This
just
is
go
a
to the
wave right
beach.
here.
Come on, keep it coming. I always feel. I just always feel better after I leave the beach. Not in a I'm drained sort of way, but in a more it grounds me. It's very grounding. But then again, you also have your shoes off and you're walking in the sand. I mean, that is like completely it's literally being grounded. You know? And then there's something about just even if I'm just walk into the ocean, you feel you're part of that kind of earth movement. And then you're looking at it's just this vast thing and you're like, wow, you feel like you're connected to the planet.
Yeah, you feel small and big all at the same time.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's actually like I heard somebody talking about this, where there's a culture within MMA and specifically jiu-jitsu, where they would like in Brazil be like, you go train and then you go into the water, you go into the beach.
Oh, wow.
And what it is really is it's like a salt bath. So you get like, you actually absorb minerals while also cooling off, and, you know, maybe you're warming down by kind of swimming a little bit, but like I think there's something, you know, biological going on, and then that translates to the spiritual.
You're also stepping into an ocean which is full of it's a whole nother planet. There's a whole nother system of life in there. And it's like it's kind of scary because everybody's scared of sharks, you know. But you know there's fish, you know. I live in Long Beach, and I'll go to Seal Beach which is like right next door.
Yeah.
Because the beaches are cleaner and the water's like you can actually go in it. But Seal, I think it's Seal Beach it has the highest population of stingrays out of like the whole country.
That's what killed Steve Irwin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's right. But
Right-
like a
right in the
giant
heart.
one. But these, they tell you to shuffle your feet when you walk out in the water because if you don't, you just end up stepping on them.
Oh, and
So if
then
you
they
shuffle your
potentially
feet-
react.
Yeah, because they're just like, oh, you stepped on me, boom. But if you kind of let them know you're coming, they'll get out of the way. That's what happens. A lot of people just step on them and then they just jam you. Oh. Yeah, I've stepped on them before. I've never been hit, but I've felt it. You put your foot down and you feel something go zzz, and it scurries away. It's this flat little thing and it's
Dude, that freaks
terrifying.
me out.
Yeah, they say I've never felt it, but they say it's one of the worst pains.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, and you're just.
I mean, you're getting stabbed plus poisoned. That's like a double,
Yeah.
for sure. What was I gonna say? That like literally gave me amnesia just thinking about that. I was gonna say the other thing about getting away from taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. That's the Cheers theme song.
Taking a break from all your worries.
Sure would help a lot. Yeah. Well, little changes of scenery. Like Andy and I used to notice that when we were like in the mixing stages or something, that like, you spend a normal day is like a good 7 or 8 hours in the studio, and a long day is a few extra than that. And you're spending 95% of the time looking at Pro Tools.
A screen.
So like, we found that things sounded different when we turned the screens off.
Oh yeah.
Super weird, which kind of it gets into a little bit of that land of synesthesia, or like, or even just the way your senses feel. Like
You're also not looking at a waveform and analyzing it with your sight.
That
right?
too.
I can't remember who it was, but there was a producer talking about that, and they don't use computers. They're just one of those old school. We just only use tape. And he,
Scotch tape.
yeah, I just used masking tape. But he was saying that one of the main reasons is because he's like, I noticed when musicians and artists come in here and you start looking at waveforms and then you start kind of overanalyzing things because you can see everything.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't have that and you just have tape, it's all audio. It's only what you're hearing.
Yeah.
You're not seeing anything, and there's nothing. It's a distraction, and it also kind of makes you overanalyze things, maybe.
Well, dude, one of the things I was thinking, I was in the bathroom earlier thinking, do a lot of good thinking in there. Just about stuff, that's been on my mind, and that's been on my mind a lot. And one of them is just analog versus digital in every single way. Obviously, we're talking about like computers versus just, machines with gears and electricity moving through things and air moving versus just like ones and zeros, and
Yeah.
and just what all the positives and negatives of total control. Like I have,
Right.
there's a section in my book that's kind of all about that, just dealing with like, what are we getting out of being able to edit and control and perfectly tune things and perfectly time things, like you said,
Right.
like being able to look and see what music looks like. And it's only one way that music looks. It's so weird that the people who design these programs,
That's right.
it could have been anything. They could have used like a metaphor. They could have been like, all right, I actually had this idea for a plugin, but
Even little animals like on your screen.
yeah, it
jumping
could be animals,
Little bunny
or,
rabbits for the.
or like a forest. So let me pitch my plugin to you. Your waves right now.
Okay.
What if I pictured a mixing plugin? Picture kind of like the visual, the cartoon style of South Park,
Okay.
or something
The one dimensional.
very one-dimensional. Yeah, there's that. You can pick your style. You can pick like the South Park style,
I like it.
and Simpsons style, or you can do like full-blown like video game, like super
Yeah,
high-end
realistic.
CGI movie style. Like whatever. I don't know why Lord of the Rings came to mind. I'm sure
Sure.
there's newer movies, some sort of Marvel movie. Anyways, so you take your mix and you basically assign objects or characters to each of your instruments.
Yeah.
And then you press a button and it creates a picture. And so you look at this picture. So like if you just took like a 3-piece rock band and you use this, you press a button, and let's say you go like, okay, I want mountain scenery with trees, analogy of this mix. Boop, and it spits it out. And the lead vocal is a tree that's right near you.
Mm-hmm.
And like maybe the snare drum is a tree that's like right next to that. And then, you know, like the ethereal guitars are like distant trees on a mountaintop. So like everything's visually.
When you edit it that way, you can bring it closer or farther. Or
anything
further
that's
out.
The shaker's pan hard right. That's a little bush that's like, or a little bunny rabbit that's on the right. And so you see things, and all basically the program, the what it'll be working from is like the size of things are basically their volume.
Okay.
Maybe the size up and down is their volume relative in your mix. So it'll take
And
like
panning would be
panning is left or right, obviously, and then maybe the sonic size of things. It would analyze it, like how much low end or high end is in it, and that would place it maybe in width and depth.
Yeah, the tree gets fatter as you
add more low end. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you boost the subs, and then you know it's like you have some boulders. Yeah, the trunk gets bigger, and then like the more reverb you add, the more clouds are in the sky or something, and you'd get this like. It could easily, we just have taken that route where everything's symbolic as opposed to it being, a waveform is actually like, it's waves and sound is waves.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we could easily be seeing sound in some other way, like.
That is weird.
That would be just as valuable, right?
I'm just kind of used to seeing a waveform and knowing what it is. Because every DAW has the same looking waveform, right?
Right.
It's time to change. It's time for a change, man.
Yeah, let's
get on this.
Somebody get on that plug-in and then give me a royalty. It's a crazy thing, man. So yeah, let's get back to the worst thing about.
Did you answer that question?
I think the worst thing about me is that it's a tie, maybe, for first place for the worst thing. I think I can be a little bit too reactionary.
To what?
And it connects to the other one, which is like, I have a deep desire to be understood and to understand, like to connect with people. But then there's this part of me that's introverted and sort of a loner and a natural isolationist. Is that a word?
Sure.
And so, and music has always been like a tool for that. Like, I can get my everything out, but then the music ends up meaning almost too much to me, or the reactions I do or don't get mean too much. Basically taking everything a little too personally. So I think having a more mature, I wish I was more mature as my default setting when things matter a lot to me, but then I connect like my identity and my I think part of my value as a person is too wrapped up in what I do and what the whole thing. Like I'm obsessed with making it an accurate, like what I create an accurate picture of who I am. But then I also have a job to do part of the time when it's not my music.
Where you have to detach yourself from your personality from it.
Well, I'm supposed to bring as much as I can to it to make it as authentic and good as I can. But inevitably, there are areas in like, I want to make sure I didn't say inevitably. Inevitably, there are areas of it which maybe I don't connect to as much. So I have to get into a space of like understanding the paradigm or something, you know, like even though I like hip hop music and I connect to what those sounds do, it's definitely like a departure from, you know, being a drummer and being more accustomed to and drawn towards organic drum sounds. So like when it comes to like 808 kicks and 808 snares and programmed hi-hats and stuff, like I can totally get into it, but there's always a slight disconnect. It's not like a part of my DNA, I guess, as much. So, and once you start to get into that area, it becomes a little bit less you, a little bit less about you. There's a tiny bit of insecurity in it, but then you're also trying to just own it and be inside that box. And so I guess it's like, and then if somebody says like, nah, I just don't think the mix is hitting hard enough, it's like, shoot, or I don't know, whatever it might be. Yeah, it's interesting. So I think that'd be one thing that I wish I could find, that perfect, healthy balance of just kind of still caring as much as I care, but without maybe feeling like there's so much at stake or something. with it, and that I could just. It's one thing I've been really working on hard the past, like, whatever. It's going on a decade of like really kind of admitting that I was a little bit too sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in that area.
But that's what drew you probably to it in the first place, right?
Absolutely is. I mean,
To music.
It was an avenue for expression that that worked.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. How do you see? This is the thing, dude. It's like I've known you a long time, and you talk about your relationship to music, because I feel like you and I like a lot of the same things about music. We like music that's personal and has a certain level of intensity to it, maybe some melancholy, maybe like the darker elements of life being expressed in a cathartic way through music. But I feel like every time you show me your music, I feel like you're not dealing with that, or I don't know.
Dealing
there's
with
something.
what?
I guess the same battle of. I don't know, actually. I just
Same
know that.
battle of feeling too personal or feeling too connected to it.
I guess
Okay,
it's weird.
I definitely.
You do, right?
I brought you like acoustic cover that I was recording at home the other day.
Human Rag and Bone Man, right?
Yeah, awesome song. I just got a new mic and I wanted to kind of do something, so I brought it over here and I was asking you for your opinion on mix stuff, and even that I was like, oh, just feel like no matter what, I'm so used to hearing myself recorded. At this point, I still cringe. Not cringe, but I still get like a little uptight when I hear myself.
So wait, walk me through what's going on. Are you just kind of like
just feeling like too sensitive about it and too connected to that?
Are you just literally like? Is it like looking at yourself in the mirror, going like, "Ew, yuck," or like, is it just hearing it, or is it because you're showing me, and you're curious, and there's like insecurity about that, or is that even a part of it? What's going on?
You mean you personally? Well, yeah, that too.
You feel
for
like,
sure. I mean, I feel
check it out.
comfortable showing you anything, but I just mean showing someone else. Like sitting in a car. Here's a good example.
Oh, okay.
Most people that are music makers that I've known in my life, when they do something, it's like, let's go in the car and listen to it, and that's great. That's a great way to check your
Most
mixes
people.
too.
You're talking about me.
Everybody.
No, but I've done that to you.
I have other friends that do that too, and they like they'll will sit in the car, and some friends of mine are like annoying about it. It's like, you gotta listen to this, and then you gotta listen to this,
dude.
It's like they're so excited.
I felt annoying about. I've trapped so many people in cars. Like, check out my new song.
I'm not saying it's annoying. I'm just saying I've always felt too insecure to make someone sit down in the car and listen to a mix. I don't think I've ever done that before.
That's a perfect example.
I want to send it away and then like have that person listen to it, and then we'll talk about it later. Because if I'm there for it, it's hard. It's hard for me to do it. I think it's just singing stuff. If it was me doing a guitar track or something, I wouldn't care. It's just that vulnerability of singing that we talk about.
That's a good
So
real
hard.
world example of the difference I was trying to pinpoint like a minute ago.
The
car
example.
thing. Because like, I feel like every time I see you, if I have any new music, like I can't wait to show you. And like, for me, it's as much about our friendship as it is just an excitement to share.
But you don't feel a little, what's the word? Not insecure, but you don't feel a little like nervous or anxious about hearing yourself
like
with someone else?
Naked on display or something, or what?
This is just getting back to your point where you're like, you've never seen that in me, but this is an example of like how I totally have that. I just bottle it up. I don't really.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's like a temperamental difference. You know, like I'm a little bit more like of a
you're probably more open,
put it out there person, and you're more of a keep it in there person, I guess.
Right. And that just goes back to being kind of a shy kid growing up. You're asking about my relationship with music and growing up and stuff. Yeah, I was. It's just probably a personality thing. Mm-hmm. I definitely would say I could think back, when you're young and you start playing music with some of your friends, and I always noticed I was more attracted to like the sadder ballads on the records than any of my other friends were.
Mm-hmm.
Like the minor chord based stuff that was a little more melancholy. I remember being always the one that liked those songs better than my friend. I never understood, like, well, how come they don't How come they're not in love with this?
What's wrong
song?
with them?
Yeah, why do they like the fun song, the first song on the record or whatever? And I'm more of like the middle of the record ballad guy.
Dude, I think there's like, obviously there's all kinds of people who like all kinds of stuff. But I feel like some people, music is like medicine.
Yeah.
It really is like a thing that like has a...
Do you think some people, or
on
do you
a
think,
soul level, there's like a medical soul level medical benefit.
Don't you think that's everybody though, on some level?
I don't know.
Because I know I have friends that aren't musicians, and they're the same way.
That's what I mean.
We'll talk
Like,
about music, like,
I don't think there's any way to tell from. Well, maybe there are temperamental differences if you were to really study people, but I don't think there's any kind of like. It's not like there's two kinds of people in the world. It's a huge spectrum, but I just feel like some people have a relationship to music that is like, just kind of whatever. Like, I just turn on the radio and I like what's on the radio and I like this and I like that, but it's not like a go-to thing.
Their life doesn't depend on it.
They're like, yeah. Obviously, if you're like us, we feel like we need to create it in order to feel like we're alive and living. But then there are people who don't create music who also just are unbelievable fans of music, and everything in their life is sort of, or a lot of important things in their life are connected to music and identity.
Oh, totally.
And
just look at a big, I don't know, YouTube show at the Forum or something. Like, it's like church. All those people in the crowd. Or you look at the... So
it trips
weird.
me out because I don't even like to do that. That's a strange
we
disconnect.
should do that. Like, we need to do like a bro hang and go to a big show or go see
I've gone to so few shows, man. Like,
something about the energy of all the people in the same place, doing the same thing or focusing on the same thing.
that brings up an interesting topic because when I see, well, I don't want to make a blanket statement. So for some reason, going to see music live in the audience, and then what I see going on stage, to me is almost a completely different thing than making a recording or creating the song or whatever. And it's like, it's not even the same activity for some reason, even though I know like that both are playing drums, both are playing instruments. That was weird. Is that a Freudian slip?
Well, both are using the same song, but it's just in a different setting, right? It's a different,
like
because there's a visual aspect to it too. Or if you're listening to music, unless it's a video, I mean, nowadays everything.
Or if you're looking at my plugin,
there you go.
It doesn't exist. No, but yeah, the two things that four things spring to mind. Beyonce concert I went to.
Yeah.
The Muse concert I went to. Coldplay and Keith Urban. So Beyonce was like the ultimate in like high production.
Yeah.
Dancers
Big
everywhere, people flying out of the stage through trap doors, like unbelievable production value. Like it's like, okay, they're playing music, but I'm at
music
a circus.
Secondary. Yeah.
This
you're
is
at a
like
show. You're at like a theater show or something.
Completely. Yeah. And inevitably are my favorite part. Indubitably.
That's the worst word of all time, isn't it? We should get into horrible words later.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Stupid questions.
Yeah. So the moment where it's all broken down and it's just her and the guitar player, whatever, ends up being seemingly the favorite moment, but maybe just for me. But you can kind of tell that it's like, oh,
special.
Now we're doing something different. It's like not even the same thing. But then there's Muse, which is like a really high production rock band.
I think you saw them on the same tour I saw them. It was insane. I saw them at Irvine Meadows, which is not there anymore.
That's where I saw them.
Yeah, might have been the same show.
Could have been the same show. Was that the one where they had
the wheel
No one's gonna take me
yeah. Every song had video, I think.
And it was huge words all over. There's screens everywhere.
Yeah. I also remember them wheeling out a grand piano at one point on the stage. And then the dude just gets down and just...
Yeah.
A full grand piano.
For Butterflies and Hurricanes, right?
I don't remember what it is. Yeah.
That's the one that has the big breakdown in the middle. Yeah, I took Andy to that show and I plunked down for literally like
the best seats.
If the house speakers were a studio, we were like in the triangle. You know, like you're supposed to be equidistance from the speakers to the
Is
like
that
I was
near
like right in the middle.
Near the sound booth? Or like in that
kind of, yeah. It was
area?
like in that lower loge area, but like basically my field of vision was the stage.
Yeah.
So there's no, like, if you're on the grass, you're like,
Yeah,
stage
or on
is
the
down
side.
there.
I was on the side for that show, but there's a huge screen there, so it was I could kind of see everything.
But it was all encompassing and one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Yeah, me too. That was one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Because all those guys are so great. They're so talented. The songs are cool. They had a horn section come out for one song.
That's right.
Like, whoa, I was
Trumpet.
blown away.
Okay, so then there's that. There's high production, and obviously, I'm more of a fan of that kind of music than the other. But and Beyonce's production is way more about like, pizzazz and dancing and stuff. And Muse is just more about, I guess, a theatrical experience of like light and things like that. So then, but then there's Keith Urban, who had the biggest screen I've ever seen. It must have been like 100 by 50.
Yeah, that
the
seems to be the
entire
new
back.
thing now. Like all the huge acts just have to bring this entire. Was it behind the stage, like behind the drummer? That kind of
Just
took up the whole stage.
It took up the whole stage.
Yeah, that was
screen.
So cool.
But other than that, basically a band playing, and then Coldplay very similar. Like they have a lot of fun production stuff that happens and balls that bounce around the audience.
Yeah,
and
for Yellow, all
confetti.
the yellow balls come
Yeah.
out. Yeah, I saw that.
But those two were, you could tell the attitude of the band, specifically the singer. So Chris Martin and Keith Urban, they were like, I'm doing this for us, and they make the place feel small, and they make the place feel like a church, and you feel like you're having fun with them. There's something about their energy that's like very uniting, and the music too. It's very like feel good.
Right, there's a positive.
There's a
You're
positive
right, though.
ache.
Those two guys, like those two frontmen, kind of Bono-ish too.
Yeah,
Bono might be a little more.
He's probably
heavy.
the pioneer of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's a little heavier. He's a little more like
goes a little deeper.
Sunday Bloody Sunday,
Yeah.
like we're on a mission. But it is that same positive energy of like, we're in this together. Everybody just like,
Yeah,
because
that's
whatever that lead singer is doing is sort of like spreads into the audience. Like
Yeah.
if they're as just free, you can feel that there's not an ounce of
man.
insecurity.
That's such a cool point. It's same thing with there's so many. That just brings up so many bands. I know you're not a Metallica fan, but James Hetfield. It's like he's one of the main reasons that band is so big because he has that too. It's not like a fun guy, happy guy energy. It's more like a intensity.
Yeah, we all hate everything, but we're together, accept each other.
But there's still a positive vibe of
We all
like,
hate
hey, if
everything
somebody
we
gets hurt, pick them up. There's always that kind of thing too.
Yes, yeah.
Anyways, yeah, you need to have that front man. Those kind of bands have to have that front. If you're gonna be on that big of a stage, literally that big of a production, you have to be a Beyonce, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what raises
can't-
these artists. That's a part of what raises these artists to the level of cultural icon because obviously it can't be done without great songs. There's not
Right.
like somebody out there with horrible songs who happens to be an awesome leader
Right.
that's playing music. I guess that's why those would be politicians. So, but like, or talk show hosts or something. But there's something about like, obviously James Hetfield is almost like the quintessential rocker guy who has this certain kind of attitude. He lives it, and he becomes a little bit of a godlike representative of that
Maybe
cultural
even
thing.
maybe
that
Ozzy.
personality.
Maybe Ozzy's a better example.
It's another good,
Like
different example.
that-
He's like wacko.
Yeah, but if you listen to live recordings, anytime he has a chance, he's yelling at the audience to like, "Come on, give me back some energy," kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or say this or yell that, and that dude's been around forever.
And interestingly enough, like I would say Keith Urban and Chris Martin, because those shows just stand out to me. They're both, I think, very positive people who just love music.
Yeah, you can tell,
and
You
are
can
very
feel it,
like
yeah.
relational, and their energy is naturally going out, but they're also somewhat introspective people.
Yeah, there's
too.
like a purity to their
Yeah, it's like a childlike
what
love.
they put out. Yeah. That's a big thing with Coldplay. I think that's one of the big reasons why they connect with so many people because he has that kind of like, oh, he's really having fun.
Yeah,
You can just tell in interviews. You can
and
tell
he's
by the way
very
people talk about their music.
He's very self-effacing too.
Yeah, that helps too.
Like, but it doesn't seem like an act. I think we would have known by now. Like, I think he's pretty humble. Like, he kind of is willing to say we suck, but we're the best band in the world because we're just like, he doesn't care that some people think they're soft rock or cheesy. Like he
Yeah.
always talks about that.
Right.
Wasn't there something that Dave Grohl said about him? I think Dave Grohl has often kind of picked on Coldplay as being like weak rock
Yeah.
because he's
He's
alpha male rock, you know? It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But you know they respect each other.
Oh, for sure.
But then you have Beyonce or what was the other band I mentioned? I guess Muse. But both of them, completely different ends of the spectrum, but I'd say there's a pretty healthy dose of pretension with both. And I wouldn't even say that there's, without it being like
Necessary though, right?
it's necessary, and it also isn't really a pejorative. Like it's not not necessarily negative that there's pretense. I think it's just more like, you know, Matthew Bellamy, the lead singer of Muse, is really into conspiracy theories, and like he likes to create this other world with his music. Whereas you, with the other two examples, Keith Urban, Chris Martin, you're just like seeing a guy who happens to be really famous, but he's really just a dude who loves stuff, and like it's more about down to earth,
Right.
yet transcending down to earth with like a
Yeah.
spirituality or something. Whereas with Matthew Bellamy, it's more like you're not even really seeing a person, you're seeing more of like a world he's created. And then Beyonce, it's like she even has a Sasha Fierce, like she's got an alter ego that she talks about, like she becomes on stage. It's not about stripping away, it's almost like adding on. It's like putting on something, which is pretense, I guess.
So what do you think? I mean, what's your personal? What are you more drawn to? You're saying like the Muse guy, more creating a world and maybe character or something like that, as opposed to just someone just being down to earth and writing love songs and connecting on that level. I guess there's obviously merit to both, but I'm asking like what do you?
What's my thing?
Yeah.
Well, this is where I feel like I've fallen into the cracks as an artist. It's like the more I got in touch with who I am and what I do, I realized that like I'm always trying to strip away pretense, but get down to what matters and means a lot to me, and really try to dig into trying to be just a better person all the time, and also battling with my beliefs and battling with my presuppositions about life and battling with my emotions versus my thoughts, and like the chicken or egg thing with that. Like, do you feel things and then think about it, or do you think things and feel about it? Do things happen and then you feel? Things happen and you think and then you feel? All that stuff, and then how does that relate to God and spirituality and all that stuff? So like, in a way, I feel like normal life and normal human interaction is rarely. This is why I love podcasts, actually, is because it's kind of it's like in some way very laid back, but it's also like hallowed ground for talking about stuff. And I love when a conversation goes to that place of like, what's life about? What's going on here? And like, what's even things like consciousness and reality and whatever. But those, when you start to talk about those kind of things, it starts to, you're running the risk of the pretension of it being like, oh, we're talking about the important things in life, you know? And so in my music, I've always tried to like just really dig as deep as I can without being pretentious, and also without being of a time. Like, I don't want to just like use the tools of the trends, you know? So I kind of am always wanting to make sure that there's nothing about the music part, all the different choices from mixing to instruments to sounds, that's going to like take you or distract you from the meaning of what's going on. So I'm like,
That's stripping away.
it's like
That's not-
shooting myself in the foot, though, because it's like, I'm going to try to make this everything that it can be, as good as it can be, without it being what everybody happens to like right now. or the thing that can be liked no matter when you hear it. So it's like timelessness. Like I like to think of it as like the jeans and t-shirt or something. Like every era has a jeans and t-shirt. Like, and if you choose to wear that, you'll at least not regret what you wore in old pictures.
That's a great little analogy.
But so I guess that's the thing. And maybe that there's like a disconnect, or at least historically, maybe there's a disconnect between my personality, like the thing I've needed to create in order to just live a life, and then the part of me that's like basically always thinking about, always in the tension, and so music is like an outlet for that, and that feels even more. That's why it becomes so important to me, because it feels even more real than the reality of me talking. And it's funny because this just popped into my head, but Larry David and Curb Your Enthusiasm, people ask him like, so, you're so nice. And like, so the Larry on the show, like, who is that? And he's like, no. This person you're talking to right now, that guy's a fraud.
Oh,
the guy on the show, that's really me. I wish I could be that guy now. Like in some way, I guess that's the kind of relationship to art that I have.
That's a cool way to look at it.
What about you?
I know what you mean, because the older you get, the more you kind of have to, I don't know how to put it, but you kind of said, in order to live a normal life, I have to kind of become this part of my personality, or you have to develop a certain part of your personality just to kind of relate with the
you need happy fun guy, you need normal
the secular world, like you have like out the world outside or whatever. You have to learn that. But what you're talking about, that internal thing where you're kind of living through that in your music, that came first, right? Like that you can probably trace that back to when you're a child. Like that's, you've always had that, right?
Absolutely. That's why
Me too. And you feel like I always thought, well, that'll probably change and I'll evolve a little bit when I get older and I'll become an old person. But now I'm an old person and I don't feel any different.
It's exactly the same.
And people say that all the time, like, I don't feel old. I just hit 50, but I feel like I'm a teenager. I kind of know, at least in this context, I kind of know what that means, because I still in the internal kind of whatever's going on in your head, and you want to make music, you want to create something. That it's like a feeling almost. And you've had that for so long. You don't really ever grow out of that, I don't think.
Yeah.
That's why I think maybe they say music is like the fountain of youth. We don't really ever feel like you're getting old, because of that process is always going on internally. And you only feel like you're satiated with that if you're creating something, or you're doing music, or you're recording, or you're building something,
Yeah, creativity
that part doesn't get satisfied until
it keeps you young. Even though that part of you that you're talking about, that I totally connect to. It's like, there's this little part of me that's just exactly the same.
As it always has been.
Yeah, ever since as far back as my memory goes, this little part of me that's like looking out and going like, what is going on here? And I feel like this, and some people seem to feel like that, but other people don't seem to feel like that at all. I guess I'll just say this. Yeah. Like whatever that little thing is, and then like the struggles, and it's been exactly the same. And then all this stuff has been added on top of it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You kind of just learn how to be an adult, or you learn how to be whatever age you are. You kind of have to.
But that fountain of youth aspect is interesting, because
that's what it is. I think that's the fountain of youth. It's that internal, whatever, that motor that's.
Yeah, but the paradox is it's like that part of me always felt like a very old part.
Ooh, maybe that's because it's just a thing that you tap into, or you are tapped into it, or you're not.
You mean like a collective unconscious?
Yeah, just that.
Or a primal thing that everybody has on some level.
Whatever it is, I don't think everybody, I don't know. I think it's a thing. I look at music and art as a thing that you kind of like jump in, you tap into it. You don't just, I'm going to make this because I can do this. It's like, it's a thing that's already been there forever. And you're either attracted to it and you want to dabble in it and you want to like jump in that little river, or you're just not interested in it. On some level, that's why artists and our creative people tend to really congregate together, because that's the only time I ever, with other musicians, it's the only time I ever feel the kindred spirit thing. Otherwise, I feel like hanging out with people that don't do those kind of things. I've always been like envious of those kind of people, because like, oh, they just get it. They just get life. Like they're just doing it right, and they're just in it. And I feel like I have to put myself in it almost.
Yeah.
But when I'm around other musicians, there's just a unspoken common ground or something.
Yeah, you see that too. Like most a lot of the podcasts I listen to happen to be comedians, and they have this like,
Yeah, they have their own thing.
I cannot stand hanging out with non-comedians. Like you hear Bill
Right.
Burr talk a lot about like, if I'm somewhere and there's a comedian, it's like a life raft. You just like, I
just go,
gotta
yeah, yeah.
reach out for the comedian.
Because they
so I
think
don't,
the same way. And their internal thing is similar to yours.
yeah, it's the same. Like most of my friends, for a whole bunch of reasons, but are musicians because you just kind of think the same way. But I think this artist core isn't necessarily a music thing. I think it's sort of an artist thing, and almost without over romanticizing it or making it more like, ooh, this is a better way to be or something or whatever.
Pretentious.
It feels like an affliction a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And like I just remember feeling whatever this little feeling is, this isolation feeling. A lot of people feel that isolation maybe without the need to do something specific about it. Like you're drawn to music, you go like, ooh, this is going to cure the isolation. And then there's some aspect to that makes you, I don't know, it's
maybe that well or whatever it is that we're talking about, you're attracted to and you jump into, like maybe it's right next to depression. Maybe depression is, you know what I mean? Because it seems like there's a correlation. Like you said, it's an affliction. My first thought is like, oh, well, that just, reminds me of there's something in that river that is depression, like swims in it too. You're not always depressed all the time, but it's it's closer.
It's a
Than
melancholy.
if you're not in that stream.
I remember being in therapy and talking about this exact thing.
Was the therapist like, what are you talking about?
No, he's a musician. Which
Oh,
is
he
cool.
was?
And
Oh,
he was
wow.
like, and I had been talking to him for like a year and a half, and he's like, I think, he's like, I wouldn't suggest necessarily like that you go on an antidepressant. You could, and it would probably help, but he's like, it's kind of, you're in that space of
that
melancholy. There's something good coming from it. Like I
Right.
think it would probably kill your art. And he turned out to be right, as I spoke about earlier
Wow.
in the last podcast.
Yeah.
But
So you have to pick. What do you want to do? Do you want to just take a couple pills and just be numb to that and just be happy living your life, or do you want to just take a risk and say, I'm just gonna let it be what it is?
yeah, and what's
Take the
funny
good
is
with the bad.
I've never really disliked that part either. Like I've always,
It's exciting.
the only thing I don't, when it comes to like intense emotions, anxiety is the one that like is just, forget it. Nothing
Right.
good comes from that unless, whatever. There's fight or
Right.
flight. And I think the fight or flight mechanism in human beings in modern culture gets attached to weird things when really it's about like, is
'Cause
there
it's
a
not
lion chasing me?
right?
That-
You're literally, life depends on it.
Yeah, and I think anxiety or things that like, especially extreme anxiety moments, usually are when your brain is sort of like it's clicking into that mode, but there's really
Yeah.
not anything that's gonna like.
It's not life or death.
It's not
But
life
it
or
feels
death.
like it is.
But it feels like it is. So, but the melancholy has always been a buddy.
Right.
It's like
the
a
kind of
warm,
buddy that,
sad pillow. Like,
right. But it's the kind of buddy where if you get too close to it for too long, it starts to kind of the negative things of
It can
what I mean? Like
spiral.
the tentacles can kind of start to come out and hug you back.
Yeah,
You want to hug it, but
and
you
then
don't want
drag
it to
you
hug you
down
back.
into the black
Yeah, because it's
pool.
heavy. Yeah. You want to hug it, but you don't want it to hug you back.
But it's all and it's like, thank God there's music and relationships, and I think that's the balance. Like there have been times when I've put too much of myself into too much of that into music, and then it starts to almost be a feedback loop in a way, and then I realize like, oh, I'm missing doing this with friends and doing this with my wife and doing this with family. Like it can get out of balance really easy because it's addicting.
Well,
process
is
of
it that?
music.
Is that the remedy? Because that's the remedy. Well, not the remedy for depression, but one of the big things about depression, or something that leads to it, is isolation. You
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah,
like
if you're
you
not
can-
talking,
you could be next to it if as long as you're not isolating yourself with it.
yeah,
And if you have other people to work with, I think I've noticed that's the cure for me when I'm feeling like way too low. I don't even, it's never like I consciously go, I need to go hang out with my friends, or I need to go work with Adam, or I need to go do something collaborative with other people that feel kind of similar. But once it happens, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. This is what I need to do.
Yeah.
If
It's
I'm-
really, it's balance, right? A
Yeah.
lot of it. It's
Yeah,
like,
you got to check yourself, because if you're gonna be in that melancholy creative land, you got to make sure you know when to kind of back up a little bit, right?
got to know when to hold them.
That's right.
Know when to fold them.
No wind fold up. Should we
No,
wrap
it
up?
is. Yeah, we should wrap it up. But yeah, it is just, it's a balance thing. I've found that like
That you learn over time, right? You learn how to.
I need to record, I need to write, I need to be creative. I need to make sure that like that I'm talking to people, I'm processing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think if we're not processing our real feelings with human beings,
Mm-hmm.
you don't really find out what parts of your mind are like going a little crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And you get like you hear yourself talk sometimes, you're like, oh, I needed to say that out loud and hear
Totally.
that's a pretty stupid
That's why
belief.
therapy sometimes is just about you talking. You don't have to
Yeah.
hear an answer back. You just need to kind of say it out loud, and then you go, oh yeah, I sound like this.
I think that's why I love podcasts, and that's why I've been drawn to doing one again.
Mhm.
And like,
Yeah.
it's like
Me
this
too.
cool little space where you can do this stuff and just bounce and bounce and bounce ideas. And
Mm-hmm.
there's not like this feeling of like, oh, we better get to work doing something else, or oh,
Mhm.
it's easy to not do this. I've heard Joe Rogan talk
Mhm.
a lot of times about like before he started the podcast, he does 3-hour podcasts. He would never sit down for that long
Right.
with his friends or
Well, we
with
would.
interesting people.
we have.
We have.
We just have microphones now.
That's kind of what led to this in a way. Is like, but the thing
that's
is,
rare.
is,
It's
is
rare.
our friendship was like a once a year, once every few years thing, and then when
Yeah.
we would get together, it'd be like an epic conversation.
Right.
But I guess the more you're around somebody, the less you do that.
Right.
You
Not
can
anymore.
fall into a pattern.
Now we have a reason to talk shop.
Yep. Hey guys.
Oh,
Anyway-
you're still here.
You're
Hi.
still here? Oh, hello. Anyways, all right. Until next time. Shamalama ding dong.
Good night and good morning.
Good night and good morning.